Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen.
Hi, everyone.
We have a repeat guest today. She was with us in our lawyer panel, but she's back today to talk about independent journeys. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me back again. I'm very excited. My name is Sherry Fox. I am an attorney in the fertility space. I help individuals and couples who grow their family through surrogacy, donation. I am barred in DC, Virginia, and Maryland, and I do a fair amount of independent journeys on behalf of intended parents as well as carriers. So I'm thrilled to chat about all the things.
Yay.
Amazing. Okay, well, let's just start off with what's an independent journey?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. So, an independent journey, from my perspective, is any journey where there is not an agency or some sort of coordinator or consultant involved to help the parties along their surrogacy journey. So, these are people who have come together through various means, but they are not utilizing an agency or a consultant to help them navigate all the pieces they have to navigate in order to be successful.
And when you say consultant, Sherry, because we've interviewed, I think at least one, where I think her business is kind of consulting, where they contact her and she helps them through the steps. Would that not be considered independent in your wheelhouse?
From my perspective, I see that as still having assistance. I think there's a lot still of flexibility in that journey. I do think that consultants can be a fantastic addition to those who have looked at the journey and have thought, I'm not quite ready to be completely on my own, but I also don't know that I need an agency. And so I think that's a wonderful in between. That's still a wonderful resource. But for most of my clients that I have seen and that I consider independent, they really have none of that. They are really doing it themselves. But I think there is a modicum of, yes, independence, absolutely, when a consultant is involved as well.
Okay. Because it's just an added fee there and an added expense to have the consultant
Yeah,
as well. So if you're looking to kind of cut those expenses, I get it, where maybe that wouldn't be a part of an independent IP journey because they're trying to keep it more
agreed.
affordable, which makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So then when it comes to an independent journey and you're either representing the surrogate or the intended parent, they have already found a match before coming to you?
Sometimes,
Okay.
sometimes. So I find myself dealing with two types of independent journeys. I either have situations where the intended parents and the carrier have found each other through family or friends, or they are family and friends, right?
Right.
And so they've found each other. But I've also recently seen an uptick in situations where intended parents are finding surrogates and surrogates are finding intended parents on social media
Yeah.
and not through an agency, right? So they are independently locating each other, and that has been the beginnings of their independent journey. They've both decided that they don't want to involve an agency, and they have intentionally gone that route.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess, okay, so as a surrogate's point of view, when we go with agencies, you have to get a psych clearance. You have to do a few steps before you can go to lawyer and all these kind of things. Do does that still happen, or are certain steps kind of they're not necessary because you're not with an agency?
So I think that's an excellent question, and I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer and say it depends.
Okay.
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 And I'm going to tell you from the outset that my opinion is that you shouldn't skip any of those steps, even if you're not utilizing an agency.
Okay.
I have to be honest with you and say, I have clients who say to me, this is my cousin, this is my sister. I don't feel the need to go that route. I let them know what my position is on that.
Yeah.
I give them the best advice I can. But, ultimately, I understand why that's their position. They're like, I've known this person my entire life. And, we've had lots of discussions. I definitely think it's still important, even if it's family and friends, but it is definitely critical, I think, if you have found each other, on your own via social media. And I think that protects everyone. And so I have definitely seen people still go through their site clearance. Obviously, everyone's going to go through the medical clearance because that part you cannot skip. But
Right.
yeah, I think you like really identified it, because The
Yeah.
site clearance, I think, is the one where people feel like, oh, maybe I don't need that. And I disagree, but they're grown-ups, and if they want to take that risk, we put it in the contract
Yeah.
that that they have declined that, and you just move forward.
So so let's say independent parents retain your services and they bring a surrogate, they already have one. Does the surrogate get her own attorney in an independent journey? You don't represent both, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And here, you've also now identified another thing that people want to skip.
Right.
And I will not do it. I will
Yeah.
not
Okay.
skip that. I think it is critical that, particularly in independent attorney, that carrier has her own attorney, someone
Mhm.
she can bounce everything off of, so that she can feel fully like she's understanding what she's agreeing to, and
Right.
it has her questions answered and her concerns addressed. So yes, sometimes again with family and friends, they're like, oh, we're all on the same
Right.
page. We've had
Right.
lots of discussion. And what I tell them is that's all the more reason for us to just go ahead and get the lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Because that would make it easy peasy lemon squeezy for this lawyer. It's like the
Yeah.
lawyer's just coming in, and they're not going to create waves because they don't want to create waves for you.
Right.
They just want to make sure that your cousin, your sister understands this and feels just as confident about this process as you do.
Mhm.
So there's nothing to fear if indeed you've had all these conversations.
And you can give them a list, the intended parents, or a referral. Let's say it that way. They don't have to go out and like shop
Right.
around themselves. You can give them names. Okay.
Exactly. Which is all the more reason why I think no matter which side of this you're on, that should be one of the earliest
Yes.
steps you take, whether you're an intended parent or you're a carrier. I think you should absolutely be getting counsel as early as you can in the process, especially if you're going independent.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big one.
Are there differences in independent contracts versus like agency contracts, or are they like, is there really no need for anything to be different?
I really don't have a difference in mind.
Okay.
I find that the differences that exist are differences that are born out of the discussions around compensation and reimbursement, but
Okay.
not that compensation and reimbursement doesn't appear in the contract, right? So
Right.
I find that it really ends up being the same. I think that, like I mentioned, there's some things that sometimes we will indicate in the contract has been waived, like doing the site clearance.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, like the critical pieces of the contract are all still there because they all still apply,
Right.
So we
Right.
still talk about clinical management of the pregnancy. We still talk about what we're going to do in terms of establishing parentage. We still talk about the reimbursements, the financial components, all of that. So all those things still appear in the contract.
Okay. Oh, shame on us for not asking this in the beginning. How did you get involved
Yeah.
in the surrogacy world?
Yeah, no. So I got involved because I learned through reading articles that this was a thing. Like literally. So I went down
Right.
I went through a strange little like rabbit hole, learning about CRISPR, which is a gene editing tool and specifically used for like, well, lots of things, but I happen to be reading an article about meat production. Let's not talk about that. But I swear there's a connection. So I started learning about that, which takes me down this rabbit hole of talking about like designer babies and
Yeah.
genetics and all of that.
Uh-huh.
And then I started learning more about surrogacy, and I was like, oh my God, this is a thing, and they need lawyers. And so, like, I showed up at a ABA conference, knowing nobody and knowing nothing other than what I read. And then that was it. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I was like, why am I doing litigation? That
Yeah.
is whack. I want to be over here doing this stuff.
Right.
Because I was already an adoption attorney, but I also was a civil litigator. So I was litigating federal litigation, very different world.
Very different.
Um, and I was like, wait, this could make my law school loans worth it. Like, this is fun stuff,
Aw.
and it's
Yeah.
happy stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really my entree into it, was going to a
Okay.
conference, meeting really wonderful colleagues who were so gracious and shared a bunch of information with me. And I like read everything I could after that. I got like every book I could get about it, read all these articles, and just decided, okay, we're going to give it a shot. And here I am. So
Wow, that's a really cool way
That is
to
a cool way to do it.
get into this field.
It is.
thank you. I know. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. When I tell people what I do, particularly other lawyers,
Yeah.
they are so jealous.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's a
Yeah.
hard field
Yeah.
to get into, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And because it's really cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I get baby pictures. Like, I have awesome clients. Like, I love that. Like, I get to go hold the babies. Like, this is like the
Sweet.
best thing ever. So, and I love all my carrier clients. Like, they're amazing. Like, I really have had nothing but wonderful experiences with
Wow.
everyone I've worked with. So, including the lawyers. So, it's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay, I remembered my question. So do you advocate or do you hold trust for the funds, or do you advocate a separate
Such a
entity?
good question. That's such a good question. I do not. I really am uncomfortable with
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Just because, things can go wrong, and there are very high standards, I think, as there should be, for how to navigate escrow.
Yeah.
And I just would never, and I also inherently feel like not that I'm saying that anyone who does this, any attorney who does this should be conflicted out, but I feel a bit of a conflict, right? Because if
Mhm.
I'm representing the intended parents and I'm also controlling the escrow, that makes me feel a little funny.
Yeah.
So I do not, and I do highly recommend to my clients to obtain escrow accounts, get an escrow agent, navigate in that fashion. Once again, Ellen, I know this will not surprise you or Kennedy, but people who are doing family and friends
Oh,
Yeah.
as
interesting.
their carriers are like, oh, we'll just do Venmo. We'll just do, and I tell them, I say, well, that's fine. No, for real, people do that. People just Venmo each other. That's a real thing. Yeah, PayPal, like, yeah, yeah.
That seems like, just
It's
because I know
what?
I've done this a few times, so like I feel like Venmo would then flag you at some part and be like, "Well, I want a piece of this because
Wow.
interesting." Okay, because
Yes,
they can be,
I agree with you. I
yeah.
Wow.
agree with you. The first time someone told me that's what they were going to do, I said, I know that and I don't know all the rules, right? But I know just generally, like, you have to choose, like, that this is like a family or friend versus like a payment to a business, right? Like,
Yeah.
anytime you send something via PayPal and what have you, because otherwise they ding you with a fee.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so I remember saying to my client, was like, well, I mean, I think at some point, I don't know if there's like a cap for how much money you can transfer in this fashion. Is there anything like you're concerned about with that? And they were like, no, we looked into it. and they went through their journey, and no one, it was never an issue. Like, no one ever came back and said, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that.
Okay.
Other routes people take are having a joint account. So they will set up a checking account, and
Ah,
they'll each have debit cards. And
okay.
so the carrier has a debit card. Yeah. And the debit card
That
has a
is
debit
so wild.
card.
That is
And
wild.
and she just swipes the card, when she needs to pay her copay at the doctor, or she needs to go buy her
Okay.
maternity clothes or whatever. So people do that.
Okay.
Very seldom do people do paper checks. Like, very seldom are they like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a check.
Huh.
Which I find really interesting because, at least with checks, you have something to track.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
tangible. Now, of course, with Venmo or with the debit card, you can pull the statement,
Mhm.
right? But if someone were to be unscrupulous
Mhm.
and clear out the account, I mean, you might not know until it's like too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you shared lots of information about each other. Again, it's family or friends,
But
you know where to find the person. You know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean? So, but I always suggest escrow, and the reason for that is twofold. One, I think it is the better route. I think it keeps that third party who
Mhm.
is, objective and accountable, and is an expert, right? Like, they
Yeah.
know what they're doing in terms of navigating the contract language to determine whether or not a reimbursement is appropriate. So they're doing that for you. But then two, it takes something off your plate, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, and I think for my carriers, the reason I actually try to push them towards that is my carriers, I think, are sometimes uncomfortable with the asking for the reimbursement.
Right.
Yeah.
If they are asking their family, friend, intended parent that they have now, befriended, I feel like they shy away from that. And so I remind them, if you use escrow, that's just the third party person, no feelings. You don't have to put any emotions into that. You're just
Right.
asking for what you're entitled to under the contract. Whereas I think when they're asking, directly of the intended parent, there's that layer of almost as if they're asking for a favor. And I have to remind them, like, you're not asking for a favor. Like,
Right.
we all
Mhm.
entered into this contract. We all, knowingly understood the terms. You're not asking for anything you're not entitled to. But I have had carriers come back to me and say, oh, it turns out this thing was more expensive, or oh, I don't want to ask for this thing. Or at the end of the journey, they told me that they were uncomfortable throughout the journey
Oh,
asking for certain reimbursements. And I'm like, oh, you should have called me. Like,
yeah.
I would have helped you navigate that. So I'm a big proponent of escrow, if at all possible. But people do sometimes find themselves instead being more creative and deciding to go the
Okay.
route of something else. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that money is probably the most, not probably, money is the most awkward
It is
part
the
of
most.
surrogacy.
Yeah.
Like, it is so awkward to be like,
I agree.
so the copay was 25. And like, it's really not that big of a deal, but like, could you, because it's in the contract. Like, it's like,
Right.
it's
Right.
awkward. It's
Yes.
Right.
awkward.
It
Yeah.
is very awkward. And that's off-putting for a lot of people, I think, when going
Mhm.
with the independent journey, because like I have intended parents right now that are navigating that journey with someone they found through social media. And they're very hesitant to say the numbers when they're talking about things because they don't want to offend her, right? So they're
Oh,
like trying to find out, like, Sherry, like what number should we say for this thing? So let's just use embryo transfer for an
Sure.
example.
Oh,
Like they're
okay.
like, so what should the reimbursement be? And so for my clients at the outset, whether it's carrier side or intended parent side, I actually have a resource I share with them, a list that I have
good.
that I'm like, here are kind of where the industry is on some of these reimbursements right now. And
Mhm.
of course, they're all ranges, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
this is kind of low end, high end, where we fall, and some other things you should be thinking about. So at least they have something to go by to
Right.
Right.
help facilitate that conversation. Because yeah, the money part is
Yeah.
just kind of icky for everyone, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
It is.
It
It's
is.
always icky.
Yeah.
I wish it could just be a one and done situation. We're gonna talk. Okay, now it's over. Now let's go with the good times. And
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
everybody just stick to their little money corner and just like let's not talk about it ever again. Because
Yeah.
I
it's
agree.
not
I
fun.
know.
It's not fun. When they so when intended parents or surrogates come to you, here's my question. If an intended parent comes to you without a cert, do they ever come to you without a surrogate?
Yeah, they do.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, well, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
then
How do they find a
why?
surrogate?
Well, why
Yeah.
do they come to you before they have a surrogate?
So and these other parents that I'm currently working with, they came to me because they wanted to know the lay of the land before they found someone.
Okay.
Okay.
So they wanted to be thinking about the things, right? Like,
Sure.
okay, what are the reimbursements we should be anticipating offering?
Mm.
What are the other requirements they were going to necessarily need to check? And I'm so thrilled that they did. And I wish more people, whether intended parents or carriers, would do that. Because I'm happy to give you resources ahead of time. Like I'm not like, and I don't know that every attorney feels that way, but I suspect most of them do, right?
Right.
Because ideally, we want to encourage the best practices we can
Mhm.
Mhm.
in this space. And so, yeah, they came to me early, and I'm so thrilled because we had discussions about reimbursements, we had discussions about health insurance reviews, we had discussions about life insurance, we talked about escrow versus not escrow.
Mm.
And we also just talked about how they should navigate determining who is the best
Mm.
fit for them.
Sure.
So, while I didn't really give them the answers, but I did tell them, you should be honest with yourselves about how you want that journey to unfold and what kind of
Mhm.
relationship you want
Right.
with
Mhm.
whomever your surrogate is. Because if you find a surrogate that, you know, wants to be friends, wants to keep in touch, wants to do those things, and you don't want that,
Right.
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
Yep.
it
You
is.
know?
Big time.
Yeah, so you need to make sure that you're aligned in that way, you know, and you should like each other. Like you should fundamentally, on some level, feel like I like this person and I feel like we respect one another and we can build a kind of relationship over this journey that I would like, that I would enjoy. Um, you know, and identify like your red flags now too, and be prepared to stick with your gut. You know,
Right.
so if something's going wrong, then address it. And if you're not satisfied with the response you're getting, you should probably be prepared to move on. You know,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, so right now they're in the space where they have found that person now, and we are navigating the contracting process.
So what if I'm going to piggyback on Kennedy's question. So what if a surrogate,
Yeah.
an intended parent comes along, they have a surrogate, and now we're talking insurance issues. Say the surrogates, because there's not a lot of surrogate insurances that they already have their own insurance that's going to cover surrogacy. Like that's kind of like I think they should cover it, but that's a whole nother topic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate them getting the surrogate or the carrier the insurance? That's a whole nother
Yes.
expense, right?
It's a whole nother expense.
Right.
And so the first thing I always tell my client, whether intended parent or carrier, is we've got to get an insurance review for you.
Okay.
That is honestly a very small amount to pay
Right.
for the peace of mind that it delivers. So
Yeah.
I think you've got to go that route. I have had instances where they've identified that, oh, this insurance is not going to work for us for whatever reason.
Okay.
And so now they've already established a relationship with whomever the insurance expert is, so
Yeah.
that they go back and they navigate that process with them. So
Okay.
I do tell my clients very early in the process, you know, this is what we're going to do. And even the family and friends, sometimes they've already shared their like health insurance booklet with each other. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm thrilled. It seems like everything's on the up and up. I still think you should pay a
Yeah.
couple $100, you know, let's just, because these people are experts and they're going to
Mhm.
look at this with, you know, expert eyes. And so
Yes.
let's do that. Let's just make sure, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, be preparing for delivery
Yeah.
Right.
and determine that, oh my God, actually they're not going to cover this, you know,
Yep.
or get deep into a pregnancy, even just, you know, the first trimester, and just start realizing that all the bills are getting rejected. I mean, that would be awful.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And then liens too, Ellen. Like, I mean,
Uh-huh.
we don't deal with liens so much. In my areas, like if I had a surrogate in Virginia, Maryland, or DC, I really have never had a lien, but
Okay.
I've had some surrogates that are out like in Oregon and California.
California.
Great. Yep.
Yes. And I was like, oh, this is a wonderful gift for me now to
Yeah.
navigate
It's
your
he.
process.
It's
Weird.
so. I'm
I know.
sorry, but it's so dumb. I mean, when I did, let's see, my first two journeys, because I started this in 2017, I think. And there was no lien, you know, and then I had another baby in 2019. There was no lien. And then I had a baby in COVID and there was like talk about a lien.
Yeah.
And now I'm in my
Big-
fourth journey
big
and it's
deal.
like there's a lien. And I'm like, are you kidding? It's been like only like
Oh, I
6
know.
years. Like
Yeah.
it's wild how much things have changed,
It's
but
wild.
insurances saw where they can make a little extra money and it's like, are you kidding? Like
Well,
this is ridiculous.
and maybe it's from past experiences, like because when I did it, no lien at all. But sometimes a lot back then, there were multiple pregnancies. There were like twins, and sometimes in my case, like a triplet. And then there's those extra costs of the NICU, and then there's preemie births, and then there's so maybe they just
Yeah.
learned from experience, even though there's just one, possibly two embryos being transferred at a time now. Maybe it's something that they were taking losses on way back when, and they're like, wait a minute, we've got to figure this out because this is becoming very, very common for,
Yeah.
and surrogacy is becoming very, very common. Like now, whereas back
You're
then it was
being so
not.
nice and giving them such a great
She is
benefit of
being
the
nice.
doubt there. She's like, oh, insurance
Sorry.
is we're gonna listen to this. Like, we're not dissing you. I'm dissing you. Like,
Okay. Okay.
no.
I,
It's
Like,
fine.
I'm owning this. This is how I feel. I said what I said.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And
No, it
I'm
isn't.
offended, and I'm not even the one
Yeah.
having to pay it. Like, but
Right.
I'm still offended
Yeah.
by it because it's like,
Yeah.
are you kidding? Like, this is it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
pregnancy is pregnancy. Sorry. Like, maybe that's just because of the world we live in, and I'm just like, so it's really not that different from somebody who needs to do IVF themselves compared to
Right.
having somebody else do it. Like, it makes no difference. But that's fine. That's a whole different podcast. It's fine.
Okay.
Ay, ay, ay. So, like, because we had talked about like the fear, because obviously we can talk from the surrogate's point of view, me and my
Mhm.
mom. And so,
Yeah.
like, a lot of surrogates' fears for going independent is there is not really hand holding along the way.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, oh, it's a free for all, and it's kind of like you're out in the jungle, and it's like I have no idea where to go, what resources to pick, and I envy those who are capable to do it themselves because it
Yeah.
seems overwhelming and very daunting to do it. But
Mhm.
it seems like
Mhm.
from talking to you, you kind of give resources as to like, well, like you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. Not that you're hand holding per se, but kind of like
Guiding.
guiding along, like
Mhm.
these are the next steps and this is
Mhm.
what has to get
Yes.
done. You're like a personal checkbox.
And the lawyer for the
Yeah.
carrier, the lawyer for the
Mhm.
carrier would probably do the same things,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And that's why yeah, that's why I'm a huge proponent of identify legal early,
Yeah.
identify medical early.
Yeah.
Let those people help you. Let us help you figure out what are the things that are essential that you need to do, how to do them.
Mm.
And I remain a resource. And I suspect that all my colleagues feel the same way. Like I remain a resource throughout the journey. Like I tell my clients, like I understand that, I did the contract for you, I helped you with that, but don't at all feel like, and this is especially applicable when I am counsel for a carrier, don't feel like you can come back to me,
Mm.
right? Like I want you to call me and let me know, email me, let me know if you've hit a rough spot with something, we can talk about that. We can talk about how to navigate that. Because quite honestly, having an agency doesn't prevent the rough spot,
Mm-mm.
right? What it really
Mm-mm.
does is hopefully help you navigate it.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so, if you hit that rough spot, let's talk about it. And I'm a big proponent of utilizing your mental health professionals, utilizing counseling, so we talk a lot about that. And the attorneys I work with talk a lot about that. Like if you guys find yourself crossways, let us know, but also let's utilize these mental health professionals that can schedule a counseling session, help
Yeah.
people talk through the things,
Mhm.
because it's scary, I think, especially for a carrier,
Yeah.
um, because there's so much that you're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot, and that's why the relationship too, I think, is so important, right?
It
To have
is.
the
And
Yeah.
right
because
intended parents. Yeah.
yes. All the
Yes.
time. All the time.
Yeah.
That's always what we say, make sure that you know
Yeah.
what you would like out of one. Like it's not just we're not just saying it just for fun. Like
No.
we've experienced bad relationships and
Yes.
there were red
Yeah.
flags in the beginning, but
Yep.
you as a surrogate and as an independent and as a intended parent, you don't want to see the red flags because you're like a person who likes me, let's
Yeah.
go. And it's like,
Yeah.
nah,
Yeah.
no,
And
like
you're
it's
so
okay,
far
wait.
Right.
in. Yeah. You're so far in and you're like, oh, we have to go back and redo that with everybody.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
So,
know.
so Sherry, do you do a fair amount? Well, okay, through agencies where you have surrogates and intended parents through agencies, you've gotten the referrals and independents. Do you have more
Yeah.
agency than independent? Are they
You
fair equal?
know, they're kind of equal for me.
Okay,
I do really a fair amount of independent journeys.
Wow.
And then I've even had a couple traditional surrogacies, which I know not as many attorneys
great,
have experienced.
great.
Whereas I have friends in other jurisdictions where they just get virtually all agency
Okay,
matches.
yeah.
So for me, it's kind of equivalent. I definitely have a similar, and especially right now, I'm trying to think through the cases I have right now. I think I have just as many independent journeys right now as I have agency journeys right now.
So, so
Yeah.
then a question to add on to that, do you find either or to be easier to navigate? Because, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If you don't want
Yeah.
to answer it, you don't
No,
have
no,
to, but
I'm happy to answer it.
okay.
So the funny thing is, I think agency journeys are easier for me as an attorney.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think that's just because I do serve as a larger portion of the resource pie when
Yes.
I'm doing the independent journey. But that's okay with me. It's okay with me. I mean, but that does make it different because I think I do a lot more of the counseling
Mm.
side, right? Like I'm an attorney and counselor,
Yeah.
but I think I
Right.
do a lot more of the counseling side when I'm doing independent journeys. Whereas with agency journeys, I have wonderful agency partners and they're doing their jobs. They're in their lane, they're doing their thing. And so I am really just expected to do sort of the strictly legal
Right.
piece of it.
Okay.
And so in that respect, I think it's easier.
Sure. Loser.
But, really, I guess ultimately it's just different.
Yeah.
And it's probably not for everyone, right? Like, I think there's some attorneys that maybe are like, I don't want to do that much of the hand holding, that much of the counseling and directing. But it's pretty natural to me based on my personality to be that way anyway.
Yeah.
So I enjoy it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Did your does your fee change for independent people? Oh my gosh, mom, we're just
Look at
pure.
y'all,
I
like
love it.
But I was like, I don't want to ask that. That's like, but again, money is the icky part. Okay,
It's
so
the
yeah.
icky part.
yeah,
You don't have to answer it. I'm just asking. Do
mine
your prices
doesn't.
differ?
Yours
Okay,
doesn't.
okay.
Okay.
Mine doesn't. So what I have found, and it might change in the future, what I have found is if my clients come to me early and they say to me, we essentially want you to act as like the agency for us. I
Ooh,
have thought about whether I might change my fee structure to address that. And what I've honestly considered, and some other attorneys may already be doing this, is whether or not I may want to like do something on an hourly basis while I'm helping them get those first bits together.
Right.
Um, but to this point, it just hasn't been
an
that
issue.
significant of an issue for me.
Okay.
And so I just kept it the same, but that may change.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get this greater uptick, because I still need to maintain the ability to be just as responsive to my clients, whether they're agency clients or intended parent clients. So I think
Yeah.
if it starts to pull, my attention in such a way that I think, oh goodness, I can't possibly maintain this in the same way. Um, that may mean me also navigating more assistance in my practice, which I would have to pay for. So I think
Yeah.
that's where the rubber meets the road for me is like if I need to increase my firm's resources, that would cost me money to
Right.
increase those resources. And so then that may have an impact on how I charge.
So
That
just
makes
curious,
sense.
so do you like have a paralegal that helps you, or is it just all you?
I do. I have a virtual team that helps
Okay.
me.
Okay.
So I do have a physical office and I go into that office some of the time, but my team is remote. So I have a paralegal and a legal assistant that help me, but there are limited hours. So I mean, all the legal stuff is me. I don't pass
Yeah.
any of that on, but certainly like correspondence,
Yeah.
follow-up emails to the extent I can
Yeah.
get help with that, I get help with
Yeah.
that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Carrie, what happens when a conflict arises in an independent journey? Because we know in an agency journey, if you're with a good agency, the agency's kind of going to step in and try and mediate and do whatever it is, before lawyers get involved. But with an independent journey, are lawyers just automatically involved?
Yeah.
I have automatically been involved. I
Okay.
have had someone reach out to me and say, hey, this thing is going on. How do we navigate this?
Mm.
And the way I navigated that particular issue was one, I gave my advice on what I thought should happen next.
Yeah.
And ultimately, for me, with that particular issue, it was we need to get a mental health professional involved. We need to get counseling set up. I suggest that be the ask you make. This happened to be a carrier that came back to me, and I said,
Got
that's
it.
the ask you should make. You should say, and you should send an email that says, hey, this is what's been going on. It's really bothering me. I don't want this to hurt our relationship. I
Oh,
think the best next thing for us to do is to set up a counseling session and send that. And basically, I just kind of gave her like, a roadmap. And I was like, look, if that doesn't work, if you don't get the kind of response back that you're looking for, the next step is I can reach out to the intended parents attorney and I can say, hey, this is what's going on. Will you please encourage your clients, to do
Right.
this. I mean, so the first step is never for me to send anything directly, or on behalf of my client, really, I should say, but directly to the other lawyer. Because I think as soon as you see lawyers involved, that just makes people feel it feels adversarial, right? Because now you've got the lawyers involved, and no matter what, people are going to be worried that like someone is trying to move towards litigation, even if we really are not. I mean, that's the last possible thing I want to have happen. So to come back to really my answer, which is I will triage what the situation is, give advice. And so far, the advice has always been, we need to get a counseling session. And in that instance, it worked. They did go to counseling and they were able to navigate it. Do I think it was perfect in the end for everyone? No. I think some things arose that just made it hard. It just made it harder. But that's just kind of what it was. And it could have been that way even with an agency. So, because agencies do their best, but sometimes things come up that are just hard to get past, So, yeah.
Definitely.
They are. Oh gosh, just
Not going to be
curious.
puppies and
Just curious
rainbows
how
all the
that
time.
works.
Right.
It's hard.
If only, but
Yeah.
I mean, every journey I had an issue, and it wasn't me causing those issues. Like, and I'm not blaming my intended parents. It was just things you could have never like foreseen it ever. And it was like, oh God, how do we do this? Yeah. And it hurt two of the relationships. It didn't hurt the other one. So it's just the people who were in the mix, the people who were in the parties, that it just, it was sad. It's hard. It's because you can weigh all the options, you can put them all on the table, and then something's going to wedge its way in there that you never thought possible. And as hard as you try and fix it, feelings are hurt, right? Things have been said, possibly. So it's tough. It's a
tough.
very
It is.
hard thing to navigate. It's a very gray line
It's
sometimes.
tricky. And sometimes with family and friends,
Yep.
and as much as I started saying to you guys that I find that people don't want to hurt each other's feelings, but also sometimes when you're close to someone, you feel the freedom to say some of the things that you might not say.
That's true.
If you were not
That's fair.
family and friends. And so that can sometimes be, a little hard to navigate and just, so it's a lot of it, I think, is exercising boundaries, which is so hard, and trying to remember, like, okay, I'm not going to do this thing and be direct, and I'm not going to do this thing, but here's what I'm willing to do. And I don't know. It's tough. This is a very personal thing. Like, we don't get to be like, hands off about it, because everyone's hearts and minds are a part of the process.
Yeah.
It's baked in. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sherry, I have one more question for you, but it doesn't have to do with independent journeys, but you can say, oh, no, it's been talked its ear off, and that's totally fine. Because it's still a hot topic, because it's still something that's happening, and it's something that can be a domino effect to every other state, the Alabama ruling.
Yeah.
And now you are, well, I mean, I guess you're closer in proximity, but I don't know if that would actually have anything to do with any of the rulings, but yeah.
But we worry about it still. I mean, I'll be honest. We worry about it. I mean, right now, it has not impacted my practice directly.
Okay.
But I know of plenty of people, and it's still, and really, it might even be quite misleading to say it doesn't impact my practice directly. It hasn't, in that it has not impacted any of my particular clients.
Right.
But it has definitely impacted my practice. I mean,
For sure.
I am always watching legislation anyway. I'm always looking at what Virginia is doing in particular, because that's where I have the most fear about something going a little bit awry. I mean, I think that Maryland and DC have been more progressive in their schemes. Maryland doesn't actually have a statutory scheme, so it's a different thing. DC does have a statutory scheme. Virginia does have a statutory scheme, and I have confidence in it. But because we're sort of a purple state, that impacts it, right? That impacts kind of where we are. And you may have realized that we in Virginia, we are not allowed to have surrogacy agencies within the state. So that is not to say you can't operate as an agency and have carriers in Virginia. You can, but I could not tomorrow, as someone who is based in Virginia, decide to open up an agency in Virginia tomorrow. It's actually illegal.
Why?
It's not just like frowned upon or something. Like it has a legal, a criminal penalty. So, right. Yes.
Odd. I had no idea. I had no idea
So
on
we're
that one.
fighting that. We're fighting that.
Huh.
And we're not successful this last go round. There are colleagues of mine who have been working very hard on that. And so I say all this to say that yes, we worry about it because like that's a good example of something that is happening in our state that if combined with something else, like what you see in Alabama,
Gosh, yeah.
right, would really wreak havoc on the ability of carriers and intended parents to operate in Virginia. And when we actually, so the law was actually vetoed by our governor. And when you read the summary that he gave, it is pretty apparent he does not understand surrogacy.
Oh.
He does not understand that, a surrogate is not the mother of the child, just doesn't get it, right? Like it's because he talked about things that I won't even repeat them because I don't want anyone hearing that and thinking that it makes sense. It does not make any of the sense. Okay. Like I was like, sir, I need you to go read a book. Like this, what you're saying is a bunch of misinformation. So that's, that is something that we concern ourselves with here and just trying to make sure that we don't find ourselves going in that direction. It's not, it's just, and then every time, I mean, I don't like to pair abortion and surrogacy at all, but the reason that I will bring that into the topic is to just say that it is an indication of the thinking around, certain rights. And that's another thing too, that I think we try to monitor and be aware of in our position on that topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot button.
The Alabama state and other people involved in that kind of political stance, they like to blur the lines when it comes to the two, and they could be farther like apart because they're not similar at all. But this ruling is very much blurring the line, and it's like where there was no line to begin with. So it's
and to think we're in 2024 and having these types of things overturned and you're going what
way backwards,
like
way backwards.
Yeah, so far.
What just happened in Arizona, right?
I mean, just gonna say that.
I mean, they went back to a time where we could not vote.
Right.
Wait. What happened in Arizona?
Oh God.
So they reverted to an abortion abortion prohibition that, if I recall correctly, is a law that was on the books from 1840. Is that right?
1800.
I think that's And
what? Insane.
Yes. And it was like,
and it's only for the mother's health. Like if the life of the mother is the only thing that you can get an abortion for
in Arizona.
It's very
no rape, no incest. Sorry, I know that's hot topics.
I have a lot of feelings
none of that
about that. I'm with you. I have a lot of feelings about it because I very much, I mean, for me, it is an outgrowth. What I do is an outgrowth of the fact that I fervently believe in the rights of people to procreate in the fashion that matters to them or to not do so.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Like I'm all about choice in every sense of that word.
Exactly.
And so I am just angry,
Flabbergasted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
flabbergasted,
Yeah.
flummoxed, like
Yeah.
Well,
irritated, like
every
everything.
I feel like I can say this pretty confidently. Everybody who's in the surrogacy community, no matter what role you play, I feel like everybody in that community is your body, your choice, like because of what surrogacy involves, including everybody. So it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
very in this
It's a
is
touchy subject.
that's wild.
It is.
1840?
yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah, it's really I am left speechless. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
remember just hearing about it, reading about it when it happened, and
Yep.
just speechless. Like,
Mouth
how is this?
dropped, went, huh?
Yes,
Looking at the TV
yes.
screen going, are you serious? Or is this
That's
April Fool's joke? Wait a minute.
insane.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Crazy.
adding unfortunately to the list of places I don't want my family to live.
Right?
It's starting to
Like,
dwindle down.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like such a
Mhm.
beautiful place. And like,
Mhm.
It
I
is.
just, I was like, this is not okay. So,
Mm-mm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, on that note.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, is there let's and then on a different note, is there any
yeah.
stigmas that you want to clear up about independent journeys? I don't really, I mean, besides the fact that, there's terrifying. They
Yeah.
can't
I
be.
think the first thing I want to say is they don't have to be terrifying,
Love
but
that.
I think you should be true to yourself about what you're prepared to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's okay. You can still go an independent journey and utilize resources,
Yeah.
right? And get
Yeah.
help. And that's
Mhm.
okay. Circling back to Ellen's excellent point in the beginning, like if you want to get a consultant to help you navigate portions of it, do that,
Right.
right? Be honest about yourself, your
Mhm.
life,
Yeah.
what you need, what your
Mhm.
carrier needs, what her life is like. How much can you guys take on in terms of the weight, the burden,
Right.
So be honest about that. I would say in terms of just like tips, like I think go ahead and identify those experts as early as you can. Talk to legal, right? When you call that attorney, some things you want to ask, have you done an independent journey before?
Right.
How familiar are you with them? How comfortable are you with them? Given your comfort level, are you prepared to assist me with resources? How do you navigate that for your clients?
Mm.
You know, um, what is your fee structure? If I asked you to help me as I go on my search for a match, would I need to pay you for that? Is that fee structure going to be the same, different than the contracting fee structure? Is it just a separate fee? How do we do that?
Yeah.
And whether you're intended parent or GC, I think you said, can you help me identify counsel for the other parties? Is that something you can help us navigate? And so at least it gives you some foundation of like, is this the right person,
Yeah.
to help me with this? Because I think attorneys will be honest and say, I don't really do independent journeys. Perhaps you want to X, and look at agencies. Don't just, I don't want you to make that decision in a vacuum. Like, look at
Mhm.
agencies. There's lots of different agencies in the
Mhm.
world. They don't all have to be like the huge, big box agencies, if you will. Nothing's wrong with that. But if you think to yourself, maybe I can't afford that, that's not the appropriate match for me, to go that route, you can look at local agencies and vet them, right?
Yeah.
Ask questions, do your research. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Just finding the right partners will enable you to do this however you decide to do this.
Great. Great tips. Yeah.
Yeah, great advice.
Super helpful. It makes it a little less scary to go down that road. I think if I
Yeah.
were to do it
Yeah.
again, I probably would opt for an independent. Just me personally, knowing what I know from my other journeys, I would. I think I would try it.
I think there's a lot of benefits to it. There are some drawbacks too. And I just think
Mhm.
you have to decide where you fall on
Right.
the line,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Like, do you feel like, oh yeah, this sounds great. Like I would love to have that level of control,
Yeah.
then go for
Yeah.
it.
Cool.
So I'm all for it. I've seen some excellent, successful
Mm.
journeys that way. So I'm a proponent of
Yeah.
whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Love it.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Great. Great. Great advice. Wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
My
So
gosh.
nice.
Well, thank you so much, Sherry. If anybody wants
Yeah.
to work with you or get in contact with you, where can they reach you?
You can find me. My firm is Fox, like the animal, Fox, FOX, Family Formation on all the socials. So you can find me on
Ooh,
Instagram, you can find me on TikTok, you can find me on Facebook. And you can for real call me. It's okay. You can email me. It is okay. Because
I love
I've
that.
had people, and I know some people prefer the
so
internet, and that's
cute.
fine,
Yeah.
emailing. But sometimes a conversation is
Yeah.
needed, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to have the conversation.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Well, this was
great.
wonderful. Thank you
Great
so
information.
much for
Yes.
coming back and
Yeah,
talking with
thank
us.
you
Yes.
guys. Thank you so much
Wonderful.
for the opportunity to talk about it and dispel some, fears.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It's wonderful. Thanks for
Yes.
sharing your time.
Yeah,
Thank you
my
so much.
pleasure.
I think about how mental health was like such like, oh, be ashamed of mental health.
Mm.
Mental health is a real thing now. And it's like, okay, but look how long it took for people to realize that mental health was a real thing.
That's a
So
great analogy.
I
That's
have
a
some
great
hope.
analogy.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
infertility is it's the same route. Like
Yeah.
it's a thing.
Yeah.
It has to be
It's a
accepted. You have to
thing.
stop putting stigma
It's a
on it.
big
Like
thing.
it's a
Mhm.
real thing. People
Mhm.
need real help, and there's
Mhm.
nothing to be ashamed about it
And
because
it usually
it's
isn't
just
Yeah.
the
what it is.
first avenue people run down. Oh, let me do surrogacy. They've gone through their own
Right.
trials and
Unless
tribulations,
you're a
right?
same-sex male
Yeah.
couple that but like
And
Right.
that's
That
sometimes
you're
you
like, this is
different.
this is my option.
maybe you've
Yeah.
gone the adoption route with your
But
same
that's
sex,
true too. That's an
Yeah.
excellent point, Alan.
and the
Yeah.
adoption fell through at the last minute because she decided to keep.
Mhm.
Like that is
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking.
Yep.
That's
So yeah, it's
heartbreaking.
not, I don't think
Yeah.
it's always the first choice. It's yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean,
mm,
spending a lot of money
yes.
try
Yeah.
to grow your family.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know we're all singing to the choir, but still
Oh my god.
All right.
it's nice to do that sometimes. It's
Yeah.
reaffirming, it's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
there are people in the world who get it.
Yes.
And that's always
Ugh.
gives me hope.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yes, I know us too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Put sails in the wings. Let's go. Let's fly.
yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
I
Okay.
know.
Well,
Wow.
thank you
Yes.
so much
It
for
was
taking your
fun.
Sunday.
Thank y'all so
That's great.
much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I mean
Oh, we
that.
appreciate you. Thank you
We
so much,
appreciate
Sherry.
it.
Have a
All
good rest
right.
of your
Enjoy
day.
the rest of your
You
day.
Thank
too.
you. You
Bye.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That is wild. I just have to say that it's illegal to not have an agency in
Illegal.
that state, but you can work with an agency out
Right.
of the state.
It,
Like,
it's
okay,
almost like the governor is saying, well, it's not in our backyard, so it doesn't exist. Like that's what was
kinda.
running through my head. I was like,
Like,
what?
I can't see it,
What? Yeah.
so
So it doesn't
it's not
exist.
there. It's like,
Right.
what? Okay, whatever.
Illegal. I'm sorry.
Criminal charges.
I don't even know what to do other than laugh. Like it's preposterous. It's like, what?
I don't know. I don't know. But thank you, Sherry, because
Yes.
that was
Enlightening.
very enlightening on independent journeys because
Yes.
I
And
would love to say that I could do it.
you don't think you could?
I don't know. I feel like I
See?
just like somebody else taking care of all this stuff.
And when she said, if you like to have control, that's
Yeah,
me.
I know.
Like, do it. I want to
But
do it.
imagine that, like, I don't know. For me, it's just like, would I be more stressed out having to do, unless I had like an actual like list with the
Right.
checkbox? Did you do this? Did you
For
do
sure.
this? And it's like, oh, I can do this as long as I have
Yes.
my steps written and I can do it like that.
And you probably could get that because she does have a list that she shares with
Yeah,
intended parents. So I
for
can't
sure.
imagine there's lawyers that probably share with surrogates or
Yeah,
carriers.
for
So
sure.
yeah, it really made me like, because I was on the fence, like, and I'm having to put myself back in the being
Mm,
able to do a surrogacy.
yeah,
Would I choose that route? And I think in
I'd
today's
love to.
society, I would. Back then, it was so unknown.
No, yeah, you
I
couldn't have
wouldn't have
done
done
it
it
back
back then.
then.
Yeah. But today, I
No.
think there's just so much more awareness and so much more resources. So for
Yeah.
me, it really, that she almost just like made me go on
Sold you.
the side of the fence. Yeah, she sold me. Mhm.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Sherry. And if anybody has any questions or stories that they would like to share, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Stop.Sit.Surrogate.
It's been another edition of Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Also, be sure to check out our new children's book, My Mom Has Superpowers, A Journey of a Surrogate Told from the Point of View of Her Son, available on Amazon May 8th, 2024.